A very warm welcome to the first webinar of the Netherlands Business Council UAE. Thank you so much for joining us during most probably the biggest global crisis we have experienced in our lifetime. For those who don't know me, my name is Stephanie Zwachtschabel and I'm the chairman of the Netherlands Business Council UAE. Our lives and our business have changed so rapidly over the last few days, and we are all currently in a response phase. And that's why we are glad that we are organizing our first NBC webinar to respond to our members and to respond to you in these difficult times. A special warm welcome to our Consul General of the Netherlands to Dubai, Mr. Hans van Dee. Thank you very much for being here with us. Also a special welcome to our speakers and to all of our members and to all of our attendees. We know how difficult these times are. This is also the first time that we're organizing a webinar, so forgive us for any technical difficulties. As a smart man said, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. And let us listen to those words. Let me now present the agenda. Of course, we have my opening. And how will this webinar work? How can we support our members? We will introduce to you the Consul General, so he can speak also a few words. And then we will go to our topic of today, crisis management. I will also start with a brief explanation of how this webinar technology works. So if you look at your screen right now, you see a dashboard in the right corner. Today is not going to be completely interactive, but everybody is put on mute for now. This means what you can do is still ask questions if you go to the question button in your dashboard. The questions will be answered by our moderator, Arnoud Govaert. We will briefly talk also about how the Business Council can help you nowadays. Because we're currently in the response phase. It's a crisis. And measures are taken by the government. We are all analyzing now the impact on the trade and investment and on our economy. We are seeing support measures of the government, and we now want to analyze how companies here in the UAE can also access these support messages. Also, the rights and the obligations of employers and employees is important to all the businesses that are now in the middle of this crisis. We need to keep standing, and that's why also business continuity is super important at this time. Crisis management is one of the most important tasks that every company is now facing. So therefore, we are super happy that we can dedicate our first webinar to crisis management. But what can the Netherlands Business Council do for you in this time? We are currently collecting as much data as we can. From the government, from the Netherlands Business Council, from the Dutch government. We're working very closely together now with the embassy, as well as with the Consulate General in Dubai, but also with all the other UAE business councils, with the Dubai chambers globally. We were asked to be like in a task force to help businesses to mitigate all the effects of COVID-19. We are also opening up our platform to our members, to all of the people that are in need now to survive their businesses. There are also many opportunities, and therefore it's important that we share all the best business practices. It's important to collect also the data from our members and from the wider Dutch business community, and that's why we also created a survey. So we really truly hope that you will fill in this survey. So based on that survey, the Netherlands Business Council can start to organize more webinars, more call-in hours, one-on-one meetings, and making sure that we can be here for you. We really want to convey the message today that the Netherlands Business Council is here for you. Together, we are stronger. Together, we can face this global crisis. I would like now your attention for our Consul General to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Mr. Hans Sandé. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie. I hope, dear guests, that you can all hear me. Stephanie, you can hear me? Okay, perfect. I see you nodding yes. Well, thanks first of all for the introduction, and of course, especially also for organizing this webinar. It's a very useful tool, I hope, and I also sincerely hope that more webinars will come. Well, dear guests, dear friends, dear entrepreneurs, I hope, of course, first and foremost that you're all safe and healthy, you and your families. That's the first priority. We are all experiencing exceptional times from all kinds of perspectives, lockdowns, etc. You can understand that as a Consulate General, but also as an embassy, the government network from our side in the UAE, our first task now is to take care of our citizens, whether they are citizens who want to be repatriated, stranded, etc., and also to give as much as possible information to them in an adequate manner. That we will do on an at least weekly basis, and of course depending on the information that is available. But it also goes without saying that the second priority is you, the Dutch private sector, the business community in the whole of the UAE. Earlier this week, the NBC, Stephanie and her team, and me and our team had a meeting. And from the beginning on, it was clear that we tried to do our utmost to facilitate you, to help you, to advise, also in the middle of this crisis, or perhaps even more important, that in the middle of this crisis, we're there to help you. So because of that, together with the embassy, we together sent the questionnaire to you. We hope that it gives as much as possible information for us, both for the Netherlands business community and also for the embassy and the Consulate General, on the basis of which we can help you. Attached to that questionnaire, you have also seen information on the measures that have been taken by the Netherlands, packages that are being offered, and the same is true for all the relevant information from the UAE side. Again, I think it's a first start, but technically what I can already experience, it all works well. And Stephanie told me on this basis, more webinars will come. And it goes without saying, the first webinars will be focused very much on COVID-19, and that will for the time being still remain the case, but at a certain point in time, more general webinars can be organized as well. So again, thank you very much, Stephanie, once more for organizing this webinar. And again, my message to you guys, friends, entrepreneurs, is the Dutch team from the embassy and the consulate is also there for you, also during these difficult times. Probably I cannot say the whole time because indeed we have a lot of consular cases to deal with. But Jeroen Schellings from our economic department is linked. If there are specific questions, you can pose them to him. So thank you very much. And I wish you all the best, privately, health-wise, but of course also business-wise during these difficult times. But together we will survive. I mean, that's the spirit. We have seen that through the ages, through the centuries. So with that spirit, we can easily also survive COVID-19. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hans, for your encouraging words. Together we are stronger, together we can survive. Let's move on now to our topic of today, which is crisis management. I'm very happy to introduce to you today our Director of Partnership at the Netherlands Business Council UAE, Arnoud Govaert, who's going to moderate the topic of our first webinar, crisis management. Arnoud.
Stephanie, thank you very much. Welcome everybody. Thank you very much, Hans, also for your supporting words for the Dutch business community. I think everybody is keen to learn from our speaker and also keen later on maybe to see what concretely we can do and what the Dutch government can do for them. I'm going to moderate this webinar. And our speaker of today is Ton Bijlaart. And Ton Bijlaart is a independent management consultant, has his own company, and he has 30 years of experience in the aviation and logistics business. So 10 of which he spent in Dubai and the Middle East. And he has been involved in 2 very noteworthy crises for his company. And he will share some practical lessons from these crises. So he is a man mostly dealing with experience, which is always a good thing when you are trying to share lessons with other people that are going through the same thing. So I will monitor during the session, during the presentation of Ton, the questions, and I may interject sometimes with questions to keep it lively. And at the end, I'll try to get back to all of your questions. So we'll have about 15 minutes at the end where we can have a dialogue and questions. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Ton. Ton, are you with us? Could we? Yeah,
I'm with you.
Ton. Okay, Ton, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me put the presentation. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think it's extremely important that, as Stephanie said, if you have any questions that you have, just put them through the chat. I like a lively conversation, to be honest. So Arnoud and I will be sharing some questions and some answers together. It doesn't mean that I know all the answers, but at least we'll try to do so. Good morning. Unfortunately, we meet like this today because of a crisis, but let's share some experience with each other to make sure that you go through this as good as possible. So the last thing I want to do today is to give you a lecture of what to do or how to run your company. For me, it's more like my experiences that I had over the last 20, 30 years, just to share it with you and to see if we can make each other stronger. So the subject is crisis management, and I call it a necessary pain because nobody really likes to do a crisis management plan, but it is an essential thing to make sure that you have some business continuity in your company. As I said, I want to share some experiences with you. First of all, I think the first one I had experienced was in 2002, where I worked as a director for Van der Lande Industries in the UK, and we had the SARS virus coming to us. At that time, there was a lot of rumors that it would come to Europe. In the end, just very fortunate we were that it didn't happen, but we made a very clear plan in case it was coming over, what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and we had a very clear communication plan. And the second one, probably most people know about, I was director of Van der Lande again in 2008, the 30th of March 2008. Terminal 5 opened. Van der Lande Industries is the provider of that baggage handling system. But even though we had a very clear plan, we had a very clear crisis plan, we were not seeing this coming. So, but it really helped us to go through the crisis and supported us in solving the problems. And of course, lately, COVID-19, I thought, well, I'm already working with companies, so I thought let's just share that information with other people. So what I'm doing now is I support other people in just providing some practical expertise in how to deal with this crisis. So that's the experience I have. But what is the situation? Well, first of all,
just a quick one. I want to, just for our listeners, you mentioned the Heathrow crisis. What exactly was your role when you were there? You were from working Van der Lande, and what did you do in the crisis? What was your specific role in the crisis?
Well, my specific role was to do the coverage to all our clients and our contractors. So in other words, I did the communication to everybody, not the media. The media was done by somebody else. And by the way, the media was done by British Airways and at that moment, BAA, because we were staying outside the the media, but I did all the communication to our suppliers and to our customers. So in other words, we had a customer base. Everybody was getting nervous. What is Van der Lande doing? How is it happening? You can understand that if you are working with Van der Lande, you just signed a contract with them, and this kind of thing happens. Is it also happening to me? And that kind of communication, we had a plan. We also organized a letter from BAA that it had nothing to do with the system itself, but it was the operation. These kind of things that were in my hands. So quite an important role for continuation in the future. So after the crisis.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. That's very helpful to understand it, because I think a lot of these things will come back in later in your presentation about the role of communication and hands-on crisis management. So I think that's important that you have that practical background in managing crisis. So thank you for that. Let's keep going.
That was certainly some practical background, yeah. But also, I think if you just look at the differences between SARS and London Heathrow, SARS was more about how you react to if somebody gets ill. In Terminal 5 opening was more about media, was more about communication, just to let you know. Okay, the situation. What is the situation at the moment? Well, as we already said, Corona, COVID-19, they call it. That is already a crisis on its own, and we have to deal with it. But on top of it, some of the companies that we have over here, definitely in Dubai, they are concerned in oil. So oil and gas industry is not only infected by the COVID-19 virus, also the oil price is getting very low, and that also has quite an effect, and definitely I think in your company, Arnoud. Then that will create, that creates a lot of uncertainty in the market. You can see reduced order intake. If it's not now, it will come, because companies are slowing down, maybe some of them are closing. And there's an effect on the supply of materials. So if you're into retail, then can you get your materials? And if you're producing, can you get your raw materials? And there is also a lot of movement restrictions. Shops may even close down. So we don't move anymore. In my street, I live in JBR. It's always very packed and very heavy traffic. I can tell you, no, there's no traffic at the moment. And on top of that, of trying to keep your company going, if somebody gets ill in your company, you might have to put everybody in quarantine. So it just is making it very difficult. So we need to make sure that we deal with that. And on top of that, because we have less to do, your company is just running, your personnel has to be paid. You will in the end also get something about cash flow. Okay, but that steps aside. We need to look at business continuity of your organization. So why are we making a crisis plan? As I said, I'm not going to tell you what you've done a year ago, but the reasons why you would normally do a crisis plan is because you know what to do, and you also know you need to know when you have to act. So when do you make a certain decision? If you make it now, you already know what you're doing. And if you also know who is going to do that and who's responsible for that, then you don't have to talk about it in your company. It's already a given. It just gives clarity. It gives less panic. And therefore, you can also act to exactly what's in the plan. I can give you one guarantee. The rabbit can still come out of the hood. First of all, most of it, what you're doing, as long as that is all clear. So in other words, if you have a plan and you know how to do it, then at least the rest is manageable. So in other words, there's less panic again in your company. What is essential to the document that you are going to write? Well, first of all, now it's important that if you write a long story, do it, but make something that is also short and clear. Just imagine you're in the air, you have a problem with your aircraft, and you have to read a manual of 15 pages. It's not doable. Make it short and clear. Share it with your management team. Don't keep it for yourself. Really, the best thing would be that you are creating it with your management team, that they are part of it, they understand it, and you share it with them. Everybody needs to know it. And then appoint a crisis manager and appoint a communication manager. I think in small companies like probably most of you are, it will probably be that the CEO or the MD would take that role. But it could be that because you have a bigger company, that you have somebody especially to manage that crisis or the communication, definitely when you go to the media. And for this, to make that plan, there are 7-step plans, there are 5-step plans. I keep it simple because we are already quite entering the crisis to a very high stage. Let's keep it simple. First of all, make sure that you take actions now. What can we do now that will reduce the impact when the real crisis happens, when you have to maybe let people go? And then also make a crisis plan in case the crisis starts. You know already now, this is happening, and we take that as a reaction. And these people have to be responsible for it, and we're going to tell it to that group of people. If you have that now, you don't have to communicate constantly in your company. It's a clear thing. And the communication is just about executing your plan. And also, of course, if this rabbit appears again, then you have to act to what the crisis gives to you on that day. And the last thing, which probably is not many people think about that, is how do you recover when you get out of the crisis? Think about it now. If you are ready in your recovery plan and you know what to do after that the crisis is over, then you are ahead of your competition and you can take any opportunity that is out there, even though it's hard, of course. So what are the actions that you can take now? So step number 1. First of all, complete your what happens if plan. If you have a what happens if plan, if you don't have it yet, create it now, because the hard decisions have to be taken. And if you are clear into your management, you can easily do it. And then what normally would happen is you test it, you adjust it, you test it again, and then you have a final plan. I think we are now in such a phase that we have to make it, sometimes maybe adjust it when necessary, but at least we have to get something that your team is ready to execute. And the first thing you need to do is update your contact list. Everybody has a contact list, but is the right name, the position, people that left before, maybe some people join, put their mobile numbers down. And most important, because people can get ill, make sure there is a replacement available. Everybody has to have a replacement. Even the MD, it could be the CFO or the financial director. It could be the operations or the sales director. What I'm going to mention now, everybody is aware of it already, but I just want to mention it again. If you cannot work from home, make sure that you measure the body temperature. The companies that I work for now, they didn't have a body temperature check. They just were wearing masks. That's not good enough. Make sure that you measure the body temperature. And the ones that are holding in front of your head, they are out of stock. I already know it because I tried to get them. And it takes about a week or 2 weeks before you can get them. Get some that you put in your ear. Make sure that you have wipes with alcohol, so you can, between every measure, you can clean that tool, but measure the people. And the next one, everybody is aware of it. But my question is, did you mention it and did you tell it to everybody in your team? Again, the companies I work with, they mentioned it to the management team. Everybody was acting on his own, but making one clear discussion with your team, putting them all together in either a call or you keep them a meter or 2 apart, each of them, but telling them, please keep yourself to those rules, because you can screw it up for everybody in the company. Then also explain that there are precautions. If you don't follow them, that something can happen to you. Is everything okay, Arnoud? No
yes,
questions?
very well. I'm listening carefully. It's very interesting. So, and I think, for now, what I can see, as you said, Ton, communications is key. Communication to the management and communication from management down the line, making sure the message is out there. So that's an important thing, because as you mentioned, it's a lot of times it's overlooked. It's the awareness at the management level is there, but is it there in all layers of the organization? So it's a very valid point. So I was just making notes for my own organization too. Thank you.
Yeah, that is, I think that's probably, if you look at priority, it's communication, information sharing between you and your team. And also, if you have a production facility or you have people working in operations, make sure that they understand. Communication is key. So what other actions can happen now? And this is maybe something that not everybody has considered, but if you work from home, that is probably the best thing to do at the moment. But not every company can work from home. I have companies that just, they have to work in an operational environment and you cannot stay at home. But if you can work at home, work from home. Use Skype, use Teams, use this tool that we have over here, excellent tool. Because the thing is, if somebody gets ill, the rest could be put in quarantine. That means that your company is completely come to a standstill. And that's what you want to avoid. But what you can do is, if you work with operations and you have to go to the office, make sure that people either sit apart a lot and they don't come into contact, or make shifts at different times, or use different buildings to make sure that at least if one of those teams is affected, that the other team can still continue operation, because that's the key thing. And cut non-essential costs. To be honest, I cut myself right in the finger by advising the companies I work for, because I have some companies I work for in improving efficiency of their operations or efficiency in their sales. And I said, this is what you should do. And the next thing they said to me, bye-bye, we'll see you after the crisis. But it is essential to cut the cost that you don't need now. If you have expensive people working with you and you could get rid of them at the moment because they're doing a role that could also be done in half a year's time, try to build up that buffer of money, because you will probably need it. And again, it comes back, Arnoud, and I told you before, communication, communicating the crisis plan that you build, you have to communicate that to your management, not to everybody, because it makes people nervous, but essential information that needs to be communicated to all of your people. Then we go to the crisis planning. That's a nice picture, by the way, of COVID-19, if you don't know how it looks like. But organize what happens if session. And normally I would say before it happens, you can do that in a nice room, but in this case, I would say do a Teams call, do some Skype or whatever tool, or sit in one room, but keep up as far as possible. But make a what's happened plan, and it's a very simple thing. It's just event, description, action, communicate to, responsibility. In other words, very quickly, if this happens, then take that action, and we have to communicate it to these people, and that guy is responsible, or that woman is responsible for taking that action. Make it very clear. And the reason why you do that, if you write it down now, everybody agrees with that plan, and everybody has to have a copy of it, because if difficult decisions have to be taken, then you need to be there. But things that you can write down is, say that you have an MD and a CEO. If both of them are getting ill, who's taking over? Is that the finance director, or is it anybody else? And the company I work for, they've chosen that the finance director would take over, and I would step in from a distance to guide the finance director in undertaking his job. So he has a bit of support. And by the way, I'm staying home to make sure that I don't get ill. When we were talking about shifts, if one of those shifts is infected, it could be that they are put on quarantine. The other shift can still move on. But now we could also be saying, okay, if two of those shifts are infected, because we have three, are we stopping operation? Do we stop the whole company, or what? How do we respond to it, and when do we respond to it? If the order intake is under a certain threshold, say if your operations is normally doing a turnaround of 1 million a month, and you're under 200,000, and the cost of your operations is 3 times that you can make in money, what are we going to do? If you then have to think, okay, let's think about it next week, you already lose a week. And therefore, that needs to be in that crisis plan. And also, if the lockdown scenario comes, I know tomorrow night or tonight, I think at 8 p.m. until Sunday morning at 6, there's a complete lockdown. And we should not be outside anymore. There's no public transport, nothing. So we are already in quite very close to a lockdown. But what are we going to do? Are there alternatives? If you work from home, are there things that you always wanted to do to upgrade a certain thing? And let's use that time, because people are still, if you are at home and everybody's sitting idle, it is just costing you money. So do things that you maybe should have done before, or maybe there are other activities that you can undertake that even get paid for.
Ton, I would like to ask you one question on this particular slide, which is on a very important point. What happens if a CEO or an MD is sick? So obviously you look internally for right candidates. However, in small companies, that may not be available. Is your company providing that type of assistance also for, let's say, companies to assist them in this type of, extraordinary situations that the head of the company is ill and there is no real person that could take over that role?
To be honest, that is exactly what I'm doing. At the moment, I'm guiding a finance director if in case the MD will get ill. But what my normal bread and butter is that I run companies, so I could step into a company and support them. I also say that to a couple of companies, in case the MD and the finance director is ill, I'm going to step in, because a company that has no steer definitely steers in the wrong direction. So yes, that's good comment.
So, and in addition to that, Ton, you talked about, let's say, writing crisis plan, what if, do this, do that. So now I'm sure for a lot of companies, it will be the first time that they will undertake such activity. As you mentioned earlier in one of our conversations, you think more than half of the companies do not have the crisis plan. So your company, is it also helping other companies to review these crisis plans and to make sure they are adequate for the organization and the type of activities that they undertake?
Well, I've made a couple of crisis plans together with the company, because I want that to be, if I make it and I tell exactly how to run a company, that wouldn't work. But what I do is I support the companies in making that crisis plan. What should they think about? What are the measures they can take? Do some calculations for them in case they need to make hard decisions in when they need to make certain decisions and what to do. Yes, definitely.
Okay, I think that will be very useful, I think, for companies that are looking for some assistance in this difficult time. So anyway, thank you. Let's go back to your presentation.
Good. Thank you very much. So if I look at, okay, the reason why I'm mentioning these points, by the way, in crisis planning, so if certain things happen, write them down, make sure that everybody's aware, and also have agreement within your management team that these steps are not only your idea, but also everybody's idea. Because when hard decisions have to be taken, everybody has to be behind it. You should not start a discussion, no, let's not do this, or go this direction. This is not the way to do it. So if you think, okay, we spend more money in operations at the moment than we make, and it is probably easier to stop operations or to close the office or whatever you can do, make sure that it's written down and everybody in your management team knows when to make those decisions. And then there's no discussion about it. Because what you could potentially do is say, everybody, okay, there's going to be a month holiday normally in August or in June or July, because I want to go home to my parents. Let's take it now. It's not because we want it, but if we don't take these measures, and you can explain those to your people, if we don't take those measures, we probably have to go to number 3 in there, and that's lay off people. We can also say, let's fire all people, or we can do this together. Let's take a holiday for the first month, and if we still are in a crisis, let's go to 50% of your salary, because these are hard decisions. But if you make them together with your people, and they probably understand it, is that if they have to make the decision between 50% of the company has to go home at the moment and loses his job against reducing salaries, because it is what we call survival. And the good thing, if you make those decisions now and you think about it beforehand, is just consider that we have a recovery period. And when we go through the recovery, staff is necessary. So in other words, if you start up again and you've got rid of all your staff, you have to look for staff again. So you're not ready for it. So in other words, it's better to reduce their salary rather than to let them go. Or do nothing, you probably get into trouble with your cash. So therefore, it's probably better to make those steps now. But putting it into a very simple sheet, not explaining it anymore to your management team, everybody is aware of it. These things have to be done now. Then we go to the recovery plan, and you can see the sun comes out again, and hopefully, inshallah, it will happen in a very short time. We will come to a very good recovery plan, where we have to know now, we have to think about now when we open the office. If the government says you can open your office again, doesn't mean that you want to open your office. Depends on what you want and what are those conditions that you think are necessary to open your office, to start up your operations. Your organization maybe had to lay off some people. Do you want to take them back, all of them, or is this an opportunity to reorganize your organization to make it more effective? The market situation, if certain markets have gone down completely, consider it now where to start, in what market you should start to get your business starting up again. And if you get to the right market, you might be ahead of any competition. Because if you do a good recovery planning, you could be so much ahead of your competition. What's your situation in financing? Do you have to go to the bank? Just consider, if the day happens and you then have to consider refinancing, there are more people that want to go to the bank. So if you reconsider it now and you already have that discussion with your bank during the crisis, then you are the one that is going to be helped first. In other words, this is the time that you have the opportunity to get stronger, even in tough times. You can say that if you do some good recovery planning, that you can get out stronger. And again, and you mentioned it as well, Arnoud, I think the lesson number one that we all have to learn is information sharing is the key to success. And that was what I tried to share with everybody. So, well,
thank you very much, Ton. Thank you very much. I just want to quickly, before I switch to the questions that were put forward by some of the people that are listening to your webinar, on the financial situation that you pointed out, obviously very important to cut expensive overhead costs, unneeded costs that you can do without and that you may not need in this crisis. However, not cut so much that you cannot recover after the crisis. And you're absolutely right. You need to cut back to a lower level, but be ready, because the economy will pick up at some point in time. Now, I think what is interesting, you talked about, talking to banks, and do that early. And banks may not be at the moment too willing to talk to customers. And I think this is something that I also like to see a role for NBC later on, where we say, well, what are the support measures from the UAE government, and what are the support measures from the Dutch government for businesses? And I think that would be very valuable to share, because obviously cash flow is a very important issue, as you mentioned, to manage. So, and I definitely like to your point, where I always think, you need to look further ahead. Your recovery phase, it's so important not to focus just on today's, but look also at tomorrow's situation, where the times will get better and you will recover. And if you keep your core staff and your core competency, you will come out ahead. I personally have had that in the oil and gas industry. We face crisis every 6 years, and now probably every 3 years. So yes, I can say that is exactly right. It's been my experience also. So thank you very much, Ton, for sharing all this with us. I think what we do, because I don't want to run out of time, we have a deadline of so many minutes, so I would like to quickly go to some of the questions. And Ton, the first question, that is, will you share your presentation with all the attendees of the webinar? Will it be available?
That's going to be a very quick answer. It's yes.
Okay, good. So I think we will then make sure that with our IT people, the people that have logged on, they will get the presentation. Thank you for that. The second question of one of our listeners was, do we have a knowledge, and you as an aviation expert may have a bit more knowledge about cargo flights? Are cargo flights suspended, or are they still available to and from the UAE?
As far as I know, and I'm still in contact because I used to be a director at Dubai airports. And so in other words, I have some contacts over there. What I know is that they are suspending all personal flights, but cargo is affected, but still continuing. Because they cannot stop over here. There will be always cargo coming in and out, because that would completely break the economy if they would do that.
Yes, I agree, and especially UAE being so dependent on external supplies, it has to keep going. So let's trust that that will be still in place. The other one that came from one of our listeners is the lack of information and the accuracy of information. What is our recommendation to tackle this issue? I mean, you said that communication is extremely important from the company to the public and to your stakeholders. But what about the information that you need to rely on? How do you make in a crisis sure that you get the right information?
Again, this is external information that comes in. The thing is that what we used to do, because even in SARS in 2002, there was a lot of information coming in. There was a lot of confusion of what was happening. What we did is we, on a daily basis, we went into a very short conversation and said, okay, this is the information that came in. What do we take as true and what do we don't take as truth? Because you cannot measure it. You just have to make sure that your management team is always sharing the same kind of information, and it's a combination between the logic that you have and the things that you are agreeing in your meeting. So it's internal communication, again, internal information sharing that says this is the information that we believe in and this is not the information we believe in. There's not much you can do, and definitely if you look at UAE, the government always wants to project things maybe in a better way than they are, and therefore again, take your logic. If you look at that things are going better already, okay, I don't believe that they are getting better. I think first of all, the first few weeks, more people will get ill over here before it's getting better. But these are logic things that you can determine yourself.
Yeah, Tom, and then the other thing you just a little bit touched the subject is, how can we rely on the accuracy of government information? As you said, there is a tendency to portray things in a more optimistic way. So what is your take on that? I mean, how do you calculate, and how do you sort of, what kind of factor do you apply to what you read and about statistics? Do you have any view on that? I haven't been in the SARS crisis before. Any tips on that?
Yeah, the thing is, the only thing I can say is that this is the way I do it, is I listen to and I read a lot about what's happening in the Dutch news, because you follow it because my kids are living over there. Secondly, I constantly follow the UAE news, and I follow anything that is on the BBC. And out of that, you can filter the information that you think could be viable for your organization. It is not that you are reliant on information from outside to run your company. The only thing is that you know that the government says these are the restrictions and you have to deal with it. That's the information that we have. Information on when this crisis is over, this might be a question as well. When is this crisis over? Nobody knows. Only God knows.
Very good. I agree with you. International, just cross-checking, listening to international news, and do your own logical deductions on what you read and to distill information from that. That sounds like a very common sense approach. So I would like to.
Can I say one thing about it? Is
Sure.
This is a role that NBC can be really helpful with, because they are in very close contact with the Consul General, which can also test the truth and maybe some fake news. And everybody can share. It's this sharing thing. That's why what I'm doing here is just share information with each other. And the thing is that if we can also share it with the Consul General, and we make the NBC sort of a platform of information, I think that would be really helpful. The more people that are involved, the more truth you will probably see.
Thank you, Ton. I definitely think that's something that we could discuss with the Consul General and see if they could play a role in this. So thank you for that suggestion. And I'd like to just think one of our listeners asked if there's a practical checklist that you can share with the people, and related to that, is there a panel of volunteers that we could make from executive or bigger corporations to help on a one-to-one basis? I think, Ton, you just mentioned your company anyway is specialized in this crisis management. So I'm sure that your company could assist also in one-to-one consultations, etc. But the question, do you have a checklist also, for instance, you could send out to people?
I don't have a checklist, no. The problem is that every company needs a different kind of approach. It's not something that you say that there is a certain company that everybody has to go a certain the same direction. What I shared is, and it's, by the way, it's also what kind of crisis is there. Like on the COVID-19, I already mentioned a couple of things that you need to make sure is that you measure the temperature, that you do this, that you prepare yourself for when you come out. But every company that we have over here, it needs a different approach, because every company is different. And so in other words, if a one-to-one discussion is necessary, so if you have a very small company and you want some consultancy, I'm more than happy to share all the information I have. And I mentioned this to the NBC and to the Consul as well. I'm not a crisis manager with a lot of training. It's just purely my expertise is because of I've done it myself many times, and I've been involved in different crises, and I build up that knowledge because of that, and I read a lot about it. This is how I got my expertise.
Yeah, Ton, thank you. That I think I can say from having gone through a few crises myself in oil and gas, when I look at your presentation, I would say that in itself is already a checklist, and then supplemented with, let's say, a one-to-one conversation with somebody like you would help a lot for companies to get ready, to be better prepared, and to basically get through the crisis. So I think, I'd like to wrap it up a bit, because I'm conscious of the time also. I think we went through most or all of the questions. There was one more question, which kind of, I'm not sure that is very applicable to all of the members. Now, I need to quickly scroll down, sorry. It had to do with, can I land my private airplane here during these crises? So that's kind of, maybe you as an aviation person could shed some light on that. Let me just see if I got the question right.
I have some contacts. I have some contacts at the airport, which may help. But as long as I can make use of that private plane, I am happy to help.
Very good. Good. So definitely the people will be in touch with you. So I'd like to wrap it up. So thank you very much, Ton, for these very insightful lessons that you shared. As you mentioned, communication is key, planning, communication, action, and don't forget to focus on recovery afterwards, because this is not going to last forever. And keep your spirits up and just keep going. So Stephanie, I'd like to give the floor back to you. I can't hear you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much, Arnoud. Now you can hear me.
Yes.
And also thank you very much, Ton, for this first webinar on crisis management. It was very practical advice, and I think that's also what our members need right now. I got some comments in as well, like Chris van Del confirmed that cargo is still going ahead. KLM confirmed that it will operate like still 3 weekly cargo from the 29th of March onwards. And also Esther van Zomeren from the Consulate General informed us that they are there for you and that they are ready. So Ton, also thank you very much for bringing it to everyone's attention that the Netherlands Business Council can be and will be now an open communication platform, that we can share best practices, that we can share information, and let's help each other. Together we are stronger, and I cannot emphasize that enough today. Also, thank you very much to Radical Thinking. This webinar is powered by one of our members, Radical Thinking. We all know how difficult it is with technology here in the UAE, but he helped us out, and I would recommend all business councils and all businesses to work with him, because this tool hopefully is also easy for you to use. And we will be organizing many more webinars, not only on COVID-19, as Hans said, but also on topics that are really key for businesses now to seize also the opportunities, because I listened to you, Ton, and indeed there are also some opportunities that will come out if we manage this crisis well. Thank you to the Consul General. Thank you for all our members and all our attendees. Thank you to our key speakers. We will inform you soon when our next webinar will be. Most probably it will be our General Assembly, but keep your social media channels open, keep your email open for all the information that we will be sending you. Don't forget to fill in the survey, because based on the survey, both the embassy, both the Consulate General and the Benelux Business Council will receive a lot of information that can help us to mitigate the effects of COVID-19 for you right now. Again, thank you all very much, and don't forget the NBC is here for you.